Right, while I think of it, treatment of coppice stools. There's been a thread on a social media forum thing recently about how high you should leave your stools. I like them as low as possible, as possible meaning not so low that I'm sticking my chainsaw in the dirt. Where I can, where there's a single stem, I'll cut straight through at the finished height, but often you just literally can't get in, such as here. This one was very close, that was leaning that way. I wanted everything to come towards us, so I felled this one first and then cut it off. And you try and cut so that the cuts are nice and level, or in one single plane, and they slope outwards towards the outside of the stool, so they shed water, so less likely to rot. And you can see that this one was pretty high when I felled it first time, and then cut it off. Over here, this one's low. This little sprag here ideally could be lower. This one's fairly low, but if you get into here you might find there's grit and stuff. What you can do is blow off the outside of the stem that you're cutting with the exhaust of your chainsaw, if you've got a plain exhaust port. Some of them have little gratings on them to stop sparks, which rather negates that potential use. And this big huge one here, again cut fairly low. There's my hand, and all where possible sloping outwards. Over here, I haven't cut these off today because my saw is still sharp. I'll leave those until right at the end on another day, and then knock these down about this high. Most of this stuff is going to be humus, but there will be grit in here. And again, you can blow most of that off and use the push chain so that you're not pulling material into the kerf that you're cutting. So it slightly reduces the blunting effect on the saw. This one's about finished height. And these will come down lower. And the same for this one over here. You can see the height that I've felled at. That came off there. And this one's been left very ragged. This one was leaning over in that direction with a very, very steep lean on it, which is why the hinge is rather thick. Put my felling cut in, my face cuts, and then the felling cut came in here, with this one still standing. Then it sat back on the saw. You can see where it sat back. So that was a bit of a puff to pull that one over because the hinge was so thick. Unfortunately, you can't get in the back there to do anything different. So, finishing off the stools. So why do you cut them low? Why not leave them high? Because they tend to sprout from below where they're cut. Rather than coming right from the bottom, they'll sprout from around here. So basically you get your coppice on a very short stick. Someone comes along and recuts that, and again cuts it relatively high, you'll get your coppice on another short stick. In the meantime, this area here will be rotting. So eventually your stools fall to pieces. Also, it makes the coppice harder to cut. And if you come in here with any kind of tractor or a horse or anything, you tend to find that your extraction machinery or horse tends to get tangled in all these big high stools. So that's why you cut your stools low. Hazel doesn't seem to mind being cut low at all. Something like ash, stools tend to be higher, and if you cut them really low, then you cut often into the rotten inside of the stool, because ash tends to rot quite a lot. So you tend to cut those higher and cut them at a collar. But that's fairly moot now, as I expect ash coppice is going to die the death because of ash dieback.